born in Shadima, which is 10 minutes away from Thohoyandou in Limpopo, for those who might know it. So my parents broke up when I was a toddler. I don't even remember them even being together. I don't have any of those memories. At the time, my dad was working in Joburg, and so my mom took her kids and went back to Venda. And so the setup from then on was my dad would come back to Venda for the holidays, and he would pick us up from my mom's place and have us for the holidays and then take us back. But this one December, he decided not to take us back. Basically, he stole us. And he brought me back to Joburg with him. We were staying in Midlands, just the two of us. We stayed together for like 2 years or so, I don't remember. And then eventually he took me back home to his mother, and I stayed with her, and she was basically my full-time parent at the time. I would only see my mother and my father over the holidays. At the end of 2000, my dad lost his job and came back home to Venda. At the same time, I had decided that I wanted to stay with my mother, so I moved in with my mom. But a month or so after, I went to visit my dad, and he stole me again. I remember, and this is quite vivid, I was playing, and my brother walked into the yard. He used to stay with my mom, and he was carrying my suitcase, and I was so mad. I was like, I don't want to stay here. This man kidnapped me. And I was so envious of the fact that he had the freedom to come and go as he pleased. He could choose where he wanted to stay. And I was also mad at my mother for not fetching me. Instead, she sent her son to bring my clothes. So I stayed with my father, and a year or so after living with him, he became abusive. His idea of discipline was violence. On the other hand, he had this woman he was living with. He had a child with her, and she wasn't the greatest human being. She managed to drive my grandmother out of the house that was basically her own. And so now I was dealing with the loss of my grandmother, the absence of my mother, and the hostility of this house. I was depressed. Obviously, I didn't know what depression was at the time, but I was an 11-year-old girl sleeping, crying herself to sleep every night, sad all the time, lonely as fuck. And so I started cutting my hair at the back. Obviously, I was relaxing my hair at the time because I didn't know better. But so I would cut it at the back very strategically because I was scared that my father would retaliate like violently. So I had to hide the fact that I was cutting my hair. Fine. So end of 2003, I go visit my mother over the holidays, and I tell her that, in fact, I am done with that house. I don't want to go back. So she agreed, and I stayed with her. But I decided to go to boarding school in grade 8, and this was because my brother suggested it, and I thought it was cool. So again, I still wasn't living with my mother. So my mom and I didn't really have a relationship until I was 15, 16, and this is a very interesting time to get to know your mother. You're a teenager going through the motions and also getting to know this woman who's kind of detached, and you know. So there were fights, a lot of them. There were tears all of the time. But towards the end of high school, we kind of, started getting each other's vibes, and I kind of let go of the resentment and the questions. Why didn't you come fetch me? Why didn't you fight for me? Why didn't you love me enough? I realized, or at least I convinced myself, that just because someone doesn't know how to express their love doesn't mean that the love doesn't exist. She didn't know how to. Was it fair of me to expect her to change her ways so late in life? can you teach an old dog new tricks? So I've never been in love. I've fallen for a guy or two here and there, but I've never really been in a mutually beneficial relationship beyond just sexual intimacy, and I'm turning 25 this year. I don't have a love story, not the type that authors write about. And so with friendship also, it feels like it's always just sort of happened to me. It's never been a conscious effort on my part. It's just been situations where I'm like, oh, okay, so we're friends now. And but you know, basically, I've lived a life that renders me incapable of committing. I'm very detached. And you know, through the friendships that I've had after varsity, I've kind of realized that I'm my mother's child. In the sense that I love, but not really. And so this has, as you can imagine, this has been very problematic in friendships specifically. I'm not even going to talk about relationships because those do not exist. So basically, through these friendships, it's always been a problem because we're always fighting, and it just feels like, you know, that feeling of not being enough? When you feel like you're doing the best that you can to the best of your abilities, and it's still not enough for other people, which is understandable because they're used to way better and you're giving them this much. But it's just so tiring to be in the cycle where you feel like you're failing people, the people you love, the people who love you all the fucking time. Okay. So this, as much as I have come to understand my mother's limitations, I've also tried to challenge myself to be better than her. And these friendships have challenged me to be better than her and to be better than that. And so, you know, I've been trying, and it's hard. But basically, this is a story about a girl who was brought up in a world where love existed only in theory, and it had to be assumed instead of expressed. This is a story about a girl who never really had any friends, and she met some amazing human beings who taught her how to love better, how to love explicitly, how to love expressively. This is a story about a girl who's always thought she was enough, but she knows that people need people and she needs her people. And even though sometimes it feels like it would be better to let them go because it's not their job to fix her. This is a story about a girl who thinks that parents need to start raising their kids in such a way that they don't need to recover from their childhoods. Thank you.